everyone, and welcome to another episode of Full Press Fantasy Live. Here on Sunday morning of week two, we're recording this on September 17th. My name is Kyle Senra, host of the Full Press Fantasy Pod, and you can, if anyone watching on the video on the Full Press YouTube channel, from the Packers attire, that I'm the Full Press Packers podcast co-host as well. And so on top of doing those podcasts, I also do these Sunday morning streams where I'll talk about some of my start sit decisions. Of course, anyone who wants to join up either on the Full Press YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook pages, feel free to ask away your questions. If you want to tag me on Twitter as well, I'll try and monitor that. And feel free to, of course, ask away anything you have. I'll share my process, the decisions I'm making. Hopefully, that helps people with their own decisions. And of course, when we get closer to 12 noon, I'll look at the active and inactive reports so we get the final confirmation on who's in, who's out, which questionable players that we were looking at will end up missing time. I know there's a bit of later questionable news as well. A couple players, specifically some recent news yesterday, and I'll touch on how I will handle those situations. So I guess as always, well, first off, I do want to shout out one sponsor, my bookie. Before we get started, you can use the promo code PRESS22. That's all caps PRESS, the digits 22. If you do that, you'll get a double deposit match for your first entry and your first deposit on my bookie. So if you're new and haven't yet made an account, do so with the promo code PRESS22, and they'll double your initial deposit up to $1,000. So if you put in the full 1,000, you'll have $2,000 in your account, but only if you use the promo code PRESS22. And so yes, PRESS22 onto Full Press Fantasy Live. And should be tons of great games today. For all sorts of fantasy implications for some of these games as well, of course. And what to do? What do we do start sit wise? And so what I'm about to do is I'll share my spreadsheet, and this is something I set up every week, and I'll get more detail as I add a few more components to it. But just looking here, what typically I'm looking at are the over under, especially right now, the odds makers, the lines that they've set, the single team implied total, so their projected total for each team, but also the combined game over under. So the again, best data is those spots right now. So looking at that, also looking at what players did in week one, just fantasy points wise. Let's just have a snapshot of what they were actually able to produce. That we're necessarily expecting that to replicate it exactly. It gives a good idea of how we're tiering these players. The website projections for each of those players that I'm deciding between, and then the defensive rankings, essentially the fantasy points allowed by the defenses they're facing. But this is data, so it's basically what those defenses allowed last week to those specific positions. So running backs will be fantasy points allowed to the running backs by those defenses for wide receiver, tight end, those positions respectively as well. And so starting off the bat with money ballers, salary cap contract league. It's honestly one of my maybe it is my favorite league, probably the most important for me as well. And so it also happens to be a league where there's some tough decisions to make, which is good. I have enough players to choose from. 10 teams, but start 12. So maybe conventional depth wise, half PPR, and I've got a few decisions to make. A few flex spots available. A I guess by RB3 technically as well, and well as I guess RB2 and RB3, and then the starting tight end. So running through everything, um, again, I can play up to four of these. And I'll start with this because with half PPR, I don't want to start two tight ends. So really, the two tight ends are Juwan Johnson, Logan Thomas. So I'm just deciding between those two in the tight end spot, and then between these three running backs, two wide receivers, I have to start really four of them. So I have to choose who to bench out of this group. And it's Marquise Brown, Nico Collins at wide receiver, Tyler Algier, Isaiah Pacheco, and Jamal Williams at running. So looking at a few things, I took the scope of all seven players together, and I wanted to identify in each of these like statistics who had the highest or lowest in each of them. just to give myself like this visual snapshot of what I should be doing. The first thing that became apparent to me was, man, Isaiah Pacheco, the Chiefs are projected to score a ton. He's projected to score actually the most out of everyone in this list anyway on his own individual merit. Week 1, he wasn't the worst performer, he also wasn't the best. Um, Now the Jags defense, the fewest points to running backs last week. Colts running backs did awful last week. Is that because the Jags defense is amazing, or is that just because the Colts? And I love Deion Jackson, but he didn't look good at all last week, and then Evan Hull got hurt. So they, with Zach Moss inactive, they really had nothing to throw at running back. So maybe that I think that's maybe more what that is. And to me, it wasn't enough to be out on Pacheco. Also, with some news that Pacheco, or sorry, with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, that he's questionable. So to me, that made Pacheco, I would say, like a more solid start. That the floor of touches, if it's only splitting between him and Jerick McKinnon for a serious amount of touches instead of a three-way split, that makes it even more appealing. So he was kind of the easiest one. And especially looking at it, this the exact opposite, right? The Colts were the allowed the fewest points to running back last week. Jamal Williams plays the Panthers, who allowed the most fantasy points to running backs. Now it's funny how these 2 connect because how Tyler Algier performed. That's the team that he faced was the Panthers, and the Falcons were able to put up a ton of points on the ground. That's also the strength of their team. So I don't necessarily know that Jamal Williams is going to score the most fantasy points for a running back, but honestly, the more I think about it, like, kind of wanted to play him early in the season when Kamara's out. So these are the types of games matchups to go with. So I think he's the second one, and that kind of decides the 2 running backs. I also have Derrick Henry. I wouldn't even consider putting him on the spreadsheet. He's like an automatic start every week. You lock him in. But those are going to be the 3 running backs, and that frees me up to then decide, okay, that final, I guess, 2 flex spots really, or 3 technically with super flex league. I'm gonna play the quarterback in the other spot. But the 2 flex spots in this league does leave Marquise Brown, Nico Collins, Tyler Algier. And, looking between them, all the over-unders are pretty close. None are expected to be these, like, massive shootout high scoring games. For each team's individual scoring, it looks like the Falcons out of those 2 are projected to score the most. You look at what they did week 1, Algier was clearly ahead of Marquise Brown and Nico Collins. He also scored, I know for sure, 1 touchdown, maybe it was even multiple. Uh, so there's that factor. Projected wise, they're all essentially projected around the same. So that's not much of a factor difference. Look at the defenses, it looks like the Giants defense was the best of these 3 relative to the Colts passing defense with Nico Collins, and then, the Packers run defense with, Tyler Algier. So the toughest matchup there in theory is Marquise Brown. The one thing I'll say with Collins and where I think I'm gonna maybe wait on this decision is CJ Stroud. His quarterback is his quarterback out, and they're having to go to Davis Mills. I think that lowers the upside and makes me potentially want to bench Nico Collins. CJ Stroud plays, maybe I lean away. Because it's half PPR, I think I'm probably gonna go with 4 running backs. Flex the other flex I mean, I guess I have Roschon Johnson on that team. I could go with 5 running backs, but I think I'm gonna go these 3 and then Derrick Henry, and then Juwan Johnson and Logan Thomas. So I looked at some of the stats. Um, the Washington offense isn't projected. It's down with the Cardinals. I think it's the second fewest projected point total. I think the Jets had the lowest. 38.5 over under between the Commanders and the Broncos is one of the lowest this week. 40 points for the Saints and Panthers isn't that much higher. Week 1, Logan Thomas did outscore Juwan Johnson. I will say part of that is because Logan Thomas got more targets than Juwan Johnson, which is, well, that makes sense, right? The player with more targets would have more likelihood of scoring more points with more opportunities. But then that's also something I like to chase with tight ends. I wanna chase the tight ends that are getting targets, and Logan Thomas led the Commanders in targets last week. I don't know that that's realistic to expect most weeks or really any weeks other than when they're playing teams like the Cardinals where they're not really good against defending the tight end. That's been a problem for the Cardinals for years. It looks like it might be a problem against certainly at least Washington felt that to throw enough targets at Logan Thomas. Maybe that's Sam Howell wanting that, but it seemed like maybe was that just a matchup thing? I spoke with George Carmi, who was co-host on these games last year, just with everything he does with watching Commanders. It's too much. Last year was he would join for road games because he wasn't going to the games, but when he's going to as a season ticket holder, he's going to the Commanders games. He's going way earlier than these streams even start. So, but just even this year is just too much for George, and I appreciate everything he's done. Still reach out to him at G G Connie 21 for anyone else who wants to have Commanders information. He's a good fantasy football guy as well. I was talking to him just about Logan Thomas and what he expects, and he was saying he thinks that 5 to 8 targets is kind of realistic every week, but wouldn't expect more than that for Thomas. Ron Johnson only had 5 targets. He's also questionable this week, although it looks like that questionable tag has been removed. If you look at almost every other metric to look at, his own projection, the defense for points allowed to the position, it's all saying Jawan Johnson, but I just have this feeling with the tight ends chasing the target. I'm leaning Logan Thomas. Again, not sure if Jawan Johnson's playing it, not questionable. It still doesn't seem like he's fully 100%. So that's another one where I might decide. I'm gonna have to decide today because even though Jawan Johnson's playing tomorrow, I don't get to make that decision until tomorrow. Um, yeah, I think I'm probably going Logan Thomas, honestly, there. I just wanna check, were there any okay. So we're gonna, yeah, got a question from Joel, so I'm just gonna chime in here. So that's kinda how I'm going through one of my leagues to decide. Ooh, so Joel Shapiro, Joel from Hull, however you wanna, yeah, name Joel, but he's a great guy, always, supportive of full press coverage, so appreciate that. He's asking, "Hey, Kyle, should I start Lamar Jackson or Justin Fields?" I guess, if I'll look at my rankings right now, I'm pretty certain I have Lamar ahead of Fields, but maybe only, like, 2 spots. So it's I I lean Lamar slightly. Um, yeah, I've got Lamar at QB6, Justin Fields QB8. I know a few reasons that influenced that ranking was the Ravens are expected to score more points, and while Fields is really good at running, the Bucks typically have been one of the best run defenses in the NFL. Maybe that affects the running backs more than running quarterbacks, but that also does that mean that Fields will have to throw and maybe he gets a ceiling play, throwing for several touchdowns through the air this week. With Lamar, they're playing the Bengals. And I guess in theory, that should be a higher scoring shootout type game. I guess, that honestly, now that I think about it, that might come down to these, active and inactive reports. Should be kind of becoming available, uh, real soon, I think. So, but one of the things I would look at for that especially is Mark Andrews, right? Is Mark Andrews healthy? Or even he's probably not 100% healthy, but is he playing? If he's playing, then I think it's definitely Lamar, but without Andrews, that's where I think it becomes really it does become a question, Joel. Even like how I would rank them, potentially would rank Fields ahead of Lamar. Andrews is out. It seemed like he was expected to play, so I will maybe come back. I think my answer for now is Lamar, and if we think Andrews is that might be enough because again, I said you're only 2 spots apart in my ranking, QB6 and QB8, so when you're talking about potentially losing his top target, which he didn't have last week, and we saw that the game didn't go so well, maybe that's enough to affect 2 spots in the ranking. So I'll say Lamar for now, and we'll double back, Joel, and see if once I check the inactive reports, if Mark Andrews. I guess the one other thing, and I guess I'll shout out George Carmi again. I'll go back to sharing. I did. There's a couple more of these decisions I have that might be impactful for other people. There's one league. It's a PPR league. There's light points per first down rushing, but I think it's zero point 0.1 points per first down on the ground. If it's a receiving first down, it's 0.25. So with the PPR, I think there's also reception bonuses on top of the 1 point per reception you automatically get every catch. There's also reception bonuses based on the length. So it is geared towards pass catch. But for my RB2, I really do have 2 guys that aren't known as pass catchers, Brian Robinson and Dameon Pierce. I know George Carmi has kind of really made the point this year of avoiding Antonio Gibson and saying, to go with, um, Robinson just as like a pure workhorse back for the Commanders, that he can catch all the passes, that it's not gonna be split early down stuff Robinson, third down stuff, Gibson, like, it really is Robinson for all of it. And it did sort of play out last week. In fact, I think I played Robinson over Pierce in this league last week, and that ended up working. You look at the week 1 point totals. Robinson scored more than double what Dameon Pierce did, just barely over double, but still double. Uh, but even with that, I know the projections this week still favor Dameon Pierce. I tend to favor Dameon Pierce because other than their production last week, almost everything else goes in Pierce's favor. I mean, the implied totals aren't much higher. 17.25 for the Commanders, 18.75 for the Texans. I do actually wonder if news that CJ Stroud is out, I do wonder if that potentially change that and make that not as impactful. I do that might be actually the thing that leads me again away from Pierce is, um, you know, like, who's the quarterback? Davis Mills the quarterback? Maybe the Colts then command attention to the run game and Pierce doesn't do well. So that might be something again, the actives and actives might lean me towards Robinson. I know George kinda asked him about both these players, and he felt Robinson was the better play. He'll get more involvement in the passing game, which would fit this league. But everything else right now, numbers-wise, is saying Pierce, other than the results from week 1. And I think really what skewed that, like, just it makes up really the whole difference is Robinson scored a touchdown, Pierce didn't. Robinson doesn't score that touchdown, he's only outscoring Pierce. But still, it is what he is, that is what he produced, so yeah, I have Pierce in now as the starter, blue for start, orange for not for sit, but I might change that with the news of whoever's in at quarterback. Speaking of quarterback, this one quarterback decision is something I'm gonna have to deal with in a Superflex league kinda every week this year, so this might be something that's as a decision is often. Dak Prescott, Geno Smith, Joe Burrow. And yeah, it feels like Burrow should be started. So it really does come down to Dak Prescott, Geno Smith. And honestly, if you look at the numbers, like Burrow's like the highest in almost every category. So it made him kind of like the easy one to start. And then between Geno and Dak. Now, implied totals. The Cowboys are projected to score 25 points, Seahawks 21. But I think literally every other number points towards Geno being better. Because even though the Cowboys, their own total is higher, they're favored by so much against the Jets. Over under is actually low, 38.5, which that's not a game script you want for the leading quarterback. That says that that team that's up, especially the Cowboys and Mike McCarthy coach team, they're going to run the ball a ton, and so less passing opportunity. So that lower over under, it's almost a 10-point difference makes up for, I think, the difference in implied total. So that you can almost neutral it out, and then you look at, okay, what happened week 1? Like, none of these quarterbacks really performed well in week 1, but at least, barely, but got to double-digit points, just making it 10. Dak didn't even reach 5 points. The projections this week are Geno's actually I lied. I said Burrow was in charge of most of these categories. I guess 3 of the 5, he's the leader, but Geno's actually projected slightly higher than Burrow. And the defensive matchup. Um, Seahawks play, I can't remember. Probably should have wrote those down. But, their defense allowed the, I guess, 20 ranked 25th, so they allowed the 8th most points to quarterbacks, whereas Dak, playing the Jets, they allowed the 12th fewest. The Ravens allowed the 13th fewest. So that means good matchup for him. I think that's enough to make me wanna play him over Dak. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking. And, we're 10 noon, so I think we might be able to, go check out the, the active and active list. So I'm gonna head over there now. Let's, see what, it's saying. Yeah, it looks like the lists are released right now for week 2. Alright, so starting with the Atlanta Falcons, this has been interesting because they talked about potentially using Cordell Patterson in this, like, hybrid, they call it the Joker role. So far, he's out 2 weeks in a row. Like, they it was all a big joke. They're not actually gonna use him. It's gonna all go towards John and Tyler Algier. One league I was deciding really kind of pushes me towards that, yeah, I'll just play Algier. If it's a two-way committee at running back and they're splitting a lot of the carries, it looks pretty good. So, yeah, I'll go that. Um, I guess the one thing for the Falcons defensively, Troy Anderson and Jeff Okudah, that's 2 starters that are out. Jeff Okudah, cornerback especially. It's interesting though because we'll get to the Packers in a sec. But yeah, right now from an outside corner perspective, I imagine Jaden Reed actually avoids the outside corners if they play a lot. Now they might play him to the outside. EJ Terrell's really good, but it look especially with Okuda out, the second corner is a kind of a weaker matchup. So is it AJ Terrell shadows Dubs? Does he shadow Jaden Reed? Just stick to his side? I could see I could see Jaden Reed having a really good game, honestly, because the ability to move him in the slot to just avoid those tough matchups. Yeah, I think Jaden Reed's definitely playable. Dubs is playable too to me. Um, yeah, but I think both are actually good starts. Looking at the Ravens, so yeah, we'll get to Joel's question right away. Mark Andrews is active. Now, I'm looking at some of these injuries. Ronnie Staley, the starting left tackle, is out. That's not typically something I love to see. So I guess I don't know. That one's tough. I think I'm still leaning Lamar, to be honest, Joel, but I can get why, again, this question is being asked, Lamar or Fields. Both have similar skill sets. They both have really high floors. We might have saw a floor performance last week, really for both. Um, and it shows that, like, yeah, they can probably get their floors 10 points. Like a lot of quarterbacks, if they don't throw touchdowns, the rushing yards to go with it, sometimes it's even lower than that. But I think from a ceiling perspective, Andrew's back. I think Lamar can more easily access that ceiling relative to Fields, again, going against this Bucks defense, which allow a lot of passing, but really tough on the ground. And for Fields, I guess for him and Lamar, their ceilings really do both come from the same spots. Can they throw multiple touchdowns? I'm leaning Lamar. My rankings are, and I think with Mark Andrews active, even with the left tackle, Ronnie Staley being active, Andrews being in there is enough. And what Fowler showed last week, 2 weapons, solid enough. That's where I would. So yeah, I would play Lamar over Justin. Buffalo Bills, mostly defenders, honestly. The defensive backfield, Damar Hamlin, Khair Elam, both out. I think the Raiders, like, I mean, you Adams anyway. Maybe does this need, like, the secondary options like Hunter Retro or decent, like, it's still he completely goose egged last week. He was almost like he didn't even play, so I don't know. Um, this is interesting. The Chicago Bears so, yeah, anyway, so I would just stick to what you were gonna do with the Raiders, offense against those Bills active there. Chicago Bears, though, this D'Onta Foreman is inactive, supposedly a healthy scratch. So that says that they really do just wanna go with 2 running backs, Khalil Herbert, Roschon Johnson. It took 1 week for Roschon to make Foreman inactive, so, yeah, Claypool is active. I know there's talk of do they bench him? Do they make him a healthy scratch in favor of Equanimeous St. Brown? No, they don't. Equanimeous St. Brown is still inactive this week. I wouldn't play Claypool. To me, the Bears players that are playable, obviously Fields is playable. Tight end Cole Kmet if you need to. Not that I think he's a must start or automatic start, but he's in the range we don't have an elite tight end. I think you look at the targets and you can question that. Uh, DJ Moore, I think he'll be bound from for a week. Darnell Mooney did well. I named Darnell Mooney a spot or two. And then 2 running backs, Khalil Herbert, Roschon Johnson. Claypool, no, I wouldn't start. Cincinnati Bengals, Chris Evans is inactive. And I think what will happen there is the rookie Chase Brown, Canadian, he'll be active today actually. So he slides into the lineup. I don't know if he's ahead of Travion Williams, if because Chase Brown was inactive last week, but maybe it's okay, they don't trust him on special teams like the others, so he's either gonna be the main backup to Mixon or he's inactive. We're not holding him as a third one. So I could see the scenario where Chase Brown leapfrogs Travion Williams, but I also think it's gonna be mostly Mixon. So you want Mixon, you don't really want to play any of the other 2. Um, the Lions, looking at their offense, left tackle Taylor Decker is inactive. So I don't know if Penny Sewell will move from the right side to the left side if they're bringing in someone else to play left tackle. I don't think the Seahawks pass rush is that's who that was. And Geno Smith's playing the Lions. Oh, I remember it. But yeah, I don't know that the Seahawks pass rush is good enough where this will hamper the Lions offense. So I would start Lions players as you would have. Looking at the Green Bay Packers, oh boy, this is a few things are scary here. David Bakhtiari is inactive. That's not good. Hey, another starting left tackle. I don't know how the Packers are gonna approach this. Do they move I think what will happen is Zach Tom will move from right tackle to left tackle, and they'll play Josh Nijman at right. The only other thing I could think of is they keep the 4 as are, keep Zach Tom at right tackle and play Rasheed Walker at left tackle. I mean, I or they bring in Rasheed Walker, but they play him at right tackle. I think that's the likelier scenario. I know on the Full Press Packers pod, Jesse and I have talked about, like, from what Zach Tom has shown, and that he'll get a chance. I mean, he played a little bit of left tackle last year. He'll get a chance to play left tackle entirely here. Bakhtiari is already dealing with this. This could be a regular occurrence. So we both kind of view Zach Tom as the left tackle of the future for the Packers. It makes sense to give him the reps there today. Caleb Jones inactive at tackle, so yeah, it's either Rasheed Walker or Josh Nijman that would plug in the lineup. My instincts would have said Josh Nijman. I was listening to the Lombardi sweep earlier, and like Rasheed Walker was coming in, they needed a sixth offensive lineman, so I don't know if that's just specifically his role, but he starts at right tackle today. But anyway, the player so, yeah, I think that'll hamper the Packers' offense a little bit, but I think that, yeah, 'cause honestly, to me, the 2 best Packers offensive players are David Bakhtiari and Aaron Jones inactive, so that gives AJ Dillon the start at running back. I think it also just means more targets for everyone else, 'cause Jones, I believe, led the team in receiving yards last week. Was just clearly the best player down and through the air, so yeah, tricky. This Falcons team might be able to get this win because these key injuries to the Packers, and a couple injuries to the Falcons too, but inside linebacker in Troy Anderson and a second cornerback in Jeff Okudah, their key returner in Cordell Patterson, but not starting left tackle and arguably best offensive skill player. So that could be tricky for the Packers here. Christian Watson also will miss his second straight game. So that again, that's more targets to Jaden Reed, Romeo Dubs. In previous matchups against the Falcons, the Packers have kind of exploited the mismatch of tight ends. Maybe Luke Musgrave's actually really startable. Looking at the Houston Texans. Okay, and this was the one thing I was thinking about for Nico Collins, where I might stick with him in the lineup. CJ Stroud is active, so he will play. And I don't know what it is. This is the 4th team we've talked about starting left tackle. Laramie Tunsil is out. That may be hurt. That might actually lead me, if Stroud was out too, would have done that same. But yeah, Stroud's in. Davis Mills is the backup. But Mike Boone, who was the 3rd string running back last week, he's actually out. I guess they're putting in Dare Ogunbowale instead as the 3rd guy. Not that Singletary or Boone really got much. Like, it's gonna be mostly Dameon Pierce. Yeah, no left tackle in Tunsil, and Stroud is slightly questionable. That like, those leagues where I'm thinking of Nico Collins, Dameon Pierce, that might be enough to sway me to bench them, to be honest. And their opponent, the Colts, looking at their lineup right now, I know, I think it was, I guess he's their starting tight end, Kylen Granson. I almost forgot his name for a sec. He was questionable, but he is playing. They made Andrew Ogletree inactive, so the Granson, Wally Cox, I guess, behind the rookie Josh Riley's playing. Speaking of rookie Parker Washington is inactive again for the Jags, just like last week. Jermichael Hasty at running back as well. So that means Dearness Johnson's the 3rd guy, although he barely saw anything. Etienne's number 1, he's number 2, and that'll be the hierarchy for Parker Washington. I mean, Christian Kirk wasn't getting targets, so even if Washington's active, he's not gonna see targets. I would expect Kirk to get more than 3 targets this week, but who knows? Kansas City Chiefs. Nothing major. LaMichael Pirine is inactive, so actually, who's there is Clyde Edwards-Helaire is playing. He is questionable. I just see him just not getting very many touches, like, especially given that he's questionable, he'll be out there. I imagine the Chiefs are gonna use him as, like, emergency in case someone else gets hurt. Chargers, some of these were announced yesterday, but really the big one is Austin Ekeler's out, which means, Josh Kelley's in. I've got him as a top 20 running back. I'm looking at my half PPR rankings, which you can find on full press coverage, and especially now with Aaron Jones out. Um, I've got Kelly right now at RB18. Now I do need to raise AJ Dillon up, I think. Actually, maybe not. I don't know that he's gonna be like, yeah, actually, I've got AJ Dillon at RB26. That's probably where he's gonna stay. Breece Hall, Brian Robinson immediately ahead of him. Maybe lower Damian years. I think that's the one guy where I'm kinda hesitant. But yeah, AJ Dillon still, I think, an RB3 for me, honestly. I've got him at 25 right now, so, um, but yeah, Josh Kelley, I've got RB18, so I would say definitely strong play, for sure, with Eckler being out. And, yeah, let me keep going. Raiders. So they announced this yesterday as well. Jacoby Myers out with a concussion, which leaves Hunter Renfrow as the number 2 wide receiver. He got 0 targets last week, which I imagine will definitely change. Looking at the Seahawks, you know, again, Charles Cross, he's one of their starting tackles. I don't know if he's a left tackle or right tackle, but that if he's a left tackle, that will make, like, the 5th straight left tackle injured, today. That's not playing today. The 5th, not straight. The 5th, left tackle we talked about is not playing, so, maybe that hurts the Seahawks upside a little bit. Not enough that with that one league I was deciding between Geno Smith and Dak Prescott. I'm still gonna go with Geno. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, nothing really fantasy relevant. Payne Durham at tight end inactive. Keyshawn Vaughn at running backs inactive. They're kind of like the 4th stringers. They were the designated healthy scratch last week. I think it would be mostly the case until someone else gets hurt. Running back wise, Rasheed White's the guy that honestly Sean Tucker looks like he's jumped everyone to be the number 2. Tight end wise, like Kate Otten and Cole Keith are there. I don't know if you want either. Obviously, Kate Otten would be the starter. Tennessee, again, more Will Levis slander, but he's the 3rd stringer clearly because he's inactive again. They made Malik Willis the main backup, and that was the case last week. Tannehill looked awful, but maybe that was just the Saints defense. Here we go. This is an interesting one. Yeah. So, questions from Twitch. Snee with clues, or I guess Snee with clues? I don't know. I'm sorry. Uh, anyway, snooze jeez, I need to read better. Snooze clues. That's actually funny. That's funny. Capitalization would help, though, I will say. But yeah, snooze clues. Asking, do they start Aiden Hurst or Luke Musgrave? That's really tricky. I know this week well, first off, I'll pull up my rankings. I'm pretty sure I've got Hayden Hurst ahead of Luke Musgrave, though. So, like, strictly for my rankings, I would say it's Hurst. Now, I haven't like, Musgrave tight end 22, Hurst at tight end 16. That might be closer. Um, just thinking on I'm looking at who's there. I find it tough to raise Musgrave higher than, say, tight end 19. I think I would still go Hayden Hurst. It might be a tough match with the Saints tomorrow night, but I think ultimately he got the targets, more targets than Musgrave did week 1. I know Aaron Jones means Musgrave might get a bump in targets, but his bump in targets might lead him to where Hurst is at, who, frankly, he led the Panthers targets last week. And considering how good the corners are, like Marshawn Lattimore, how good they are covering wide receivers, I could see the scenario again where Hayden Hurst leads the Panthers in targets. Might be a tough pass rush, maybe lower depth of target tight end might be a favorite target for Bryce Young this week. So as much as I think Musgrave will see a bump this week with Aaron Jones and Watson out again, well, Aaron Jones being out, Watson. I think of last week. Once Jones got hurt, did Musgrave really see an increase in role? No, but I think at that point they were also just running. They were up big and they were running more than they were passing. So I mean, I think you'll see an uptick in targets, but not enough to where he'll surpass Hayden Hurst. So I would still chase the guy that I think will lead the Panthers in targets. That's Hayden Hurst. So yeah, I say go Hayden Hurst. A couple of years ago, I do remember there was a game when Adams was hurt and just ran to Tunyon as like a mismatch against the Falcons. He scored 3 touchdowns. I also think the Falcons' defense has gotten better since the last couple of years, so I don't know that Musgrave is the true difference maker in and again, that's Aaron Rodgers being able to exploit those matches. I don't know that Jordan Love can do that yet. Maybe. Last week against the Bears, I think the Falcons defense is another level. So, yeah, to just reiterate, my initial instinct when I saw this was, man, Hurst and the targets is so appealing and his role on the team. The more I think about, the more I think Musgrave will be better, but I still think there's some route running. He's not quite there yet. Like that mismatch game where Tonyan got the 3 touchdowns, he wasn't a rookie. This was 2 or 3 years in for Tonyan, like, he learned the NFL game, and he was a converted receiver, so it did take him some time. impressed with Musgrave as a rookie, but not enough to say go away from Hayden Hurst, who he was a first round pick. Maybe there was a mistake by the Ravens. I mean, it wasn't a mistake. I mean, they clearly worked out. They got Mark Andrews in the third round that year, but Hurst is a very talented player, and so much as maybe not quite as athletically gifted as Musgrave, he's got the refinement of being a veteran. Tight end's tough to play. So yeah, I think week 2, it's still too early for me to trust Musgrave even as a Packers fan. So yeah, snooze clues. I'm giving you all those clues. Hope I didn't snooze you with all those details. But yeah, I'm sticking with hate first again this week. All right. So yeah, I went through all the actives and inactives for right now for today or for this game's at 1 o'clock Eastern. But there's also some games later, like later Monday night guys, and a couple of receivers just kind of late in the week got added to the injury report. One of them is Brandon Cooks, and Dallas plays at 4:25. Now it does look like the reports are Cooks isn't expected to play, so I guess be prepared. I know in the one league where I've got Brandon Cooks, where I was still starting him. I think if there's a couple leagues where I've got him, but I just decided to bench him. I had enough better options. But the one league where I still have Cooks starting, um, I've got really 2 options I could replace him with. And again, the key was having receivers that are playing at 4 p.m. Eastern today or later, so you can know, like, you can know that Cooks is out, and then, uh, you can wait for that confirmation. Because I like the upside. I mean, the Jets matchup isn't really great, but I like his just the upside of that offense in general. If he can play, wait for it to get that official confirmation. But if he can't play, I've got Darius Slayton and Van Jefferson. I don't love the Van Jefferson matchup against the 49ers. Slayton got 5 targets last week, so I think he's got a role in that team where he won't be, like, evaporated to complete 0. I think I would lean towards Darius Slayton in that regard. Slayton might be some potential for Brandon Cooks if you wanna look for a Brandon Cooks replacement. Maybe that's a guy. Michael Gallup, I mean, on that same team does make logical sense. Um, I guess, from a later perspectives, we've got I mean, if you can go pick up Kendrick Bourne with all the targets he got last year, I think I might just straight up rather play Kendrick Bourne over Brandon Cooks, but that's another late game. Um, I guess Monday night, Elijah Moore is available. I doubt it, but that leads to the second point. Donovan Peoples-Jones might get more targets because Amari Cooper is questionable, and this was really late in the week. Like, I think he got hurt yesterday at practice. Monday night game, their last practice was Saturday, not Friday, and to see a player added to the injury report that late is usually not a good sign because they don't have if a player gets hurt, like the first day of practice, like they get hurt on a Wednesday, maybe that gives them enough time to get suited up by a Sunday or even Monday. But to have it happen on a Saturday and then you're playing a game like basically 48 hours later, that probably isn't enough time. So I'd operate under the assumption Amari Cooper's not playing. Certainly, if you have Amari Cooper and you still want to play him, make sure you've got another option playing Monday night. So I know one league where I had Amari Cooper and I was looking and it really wasn't that other option. And so I went and that sometimes might be not even on your bench on the waiver wire. Sure enough, and it is a tight end premium, so could easily flex the tight end without it, being too much of a detriment. But I noticed Harrison Bryant, and so thinking that if Amari Cooper's out, yeah, maybe it's more targets to the replacement wide receivers, Donovan Peoples-Jones. But maybe they just choose we'll exploit through the tight end, throw to the tight end more, maybe that's go through or Harrison Bryant. I'm pretty sure they tied for the same amount of targets last week. They both had 3. Bryant just happened to score the touchdown. Not gonna happen every week, but it's enough where if Cooper's out, I'll at least feel comfortable playing Harrison Bryant. It's better than nothing, right? I mean, I could make the decision right now to bench Cooper for someone else playing today, but frankly, there's really no one else that's, like, clearly like, "Oh, this upside, I have to play this player." May as well just risk it. Like, if Cooper plays, I'll keep him in, but if not, I'm fine risking it with Harrison Bryant. So that could be a sneaky ad is to look at a cross position. One thing that allows you to do that, those players playing Monday night or even Sunday night or the later games, always put them in your flex as late as possible. Now, the common thing is don't flex Thursday night players. The reason for that is so you can save that flexibility. So this is the perfect scenario. Like, and I looked and like, yeah, Don Peoples Jones was already rostered. Any wide receivers on the Browns that could be potential options to replace Cooper were already there. Harrison Bryant was available though, and so by flexing Amari Cooper, I don't have to just replace him with the receiver. I can make that choice to replace him with the tight end. The thinking there being that I can get more upside with Harrison Bryant than I would like the fifth string wide receiver, whoever's available. At least some chance, like he did last week, he could score a touchdown. So again, what allows that is to that flexibility of player flex players as late as possible. That flex spot open, use it for the players that are playing as late as possible. And there's a couple instances where I'm gonna like leagues where I've got Jamal Williams and I'm only playing 2 running backs. I'm playing him in the running back spot because the flex spots are occupied. There will be instances where that happens, and that's fine. But then also know, okay, if like it looks like Jamal Williams is gonna play, so there's no concern, but like I mean, there is a concern, right? Like maybe something happens either today or tomorrow and he injures himself away from the field, suddenly he's not playing, I'd be kinda stuck. So I'm kinda like there is a couple leagues where I'm taking that risk and just playing Jamal Williams in the RB2 spot. I wanna flex all wide receivers. Sometimes you make that decision and that decision happens, but for the most part, if you can, put your Monday night and your Sunday night players in the flex spots. There's so few games happening. I mean, this week there's 2 Monday night games, so you've got a bit more options available. So even for the Sunday night player, you would still have like 6, 7 teams to replace, but still, again, I like to flex the Monday night player when in instances, and again, Amari Cooper might be a perfect example. If you can flex him, you don't just have to replace him with a wide receiver. Replace him like I'm doing with Harrison Bryant. Throw Chuba Hubbard in perhaps as a backup running back for the Panthers. That might not be that great, um, but Juwan Johnson perhaps. Maybe you don't want to play Juwan Johnson in the tight end spot, but you can save him as a backup flex option behind Amari Cooper. That might be the best way. Also dealing with his own injury, he's not questionable. Looks like he's going to play. As I was mentioned earlier in my start sit decisions, it might be enough to scare me off him and play Logan Thomas. But yeah, it's about 12:15. I've been on for 45 minutes. I think this is pretty good. I think I've covered. I'm glad Joel. I'm glad News Clues came in and provided questions, gave me some things to think about. I guess next week I'll be back again. Same thing here on the full press coverage YouTube page. Again, we stream on Facebook, Twitch. So follow everything on Twitter though at FP underscore coverage at Full Press NFL. I've got a couple accounts as well. The Full Press Fantasy Pod account at FPC underscore Fantasy Pod. We record once, sometimes twice a week during the season. We do another episode this week. Last week we did say special, but a bonus episode on the Monday night, just talking about tight end targets. And honestly, Snooze Clues, I talked a ton about Hayden Hurst. He was like my favorite tight end pick this week just because of the role he got week one and how I felt like that can sustain through the season, like target. I really love Hayden Hurst. That's why I still would A, recommend picking him up, like you have him on the team, and B, play him. So I think it's again a good start this week. Not a lot last week, but yeah. Normally, my co-host Brad Harvin and I we record Wednesday nights, just doing matchup previews. We'll compare some players in our rankings, talk about the applied totals of the week. I know this week we talked about some dynasty trades I made, moves to make, how to react to week one, some, prioritize the leagues we can sell off, and what leagues to buy in. So might do some more procedural type things like that. With the special episode Monday before we record Wednesday. Full press Packers pod at at FPC underscore Packers. We do 2 episodes a week, game preview and a game recap. And with the Packers game today, hence all the Packers gear look. I'll be recording the reaction to the Packers Falcons game later this evening, so that should actually be out tonight for people. Get instant reactions to this, hopefully Packers win. They'll be able to access that at FBC Packers. My personal account is at Center Says. I tweet out everything I do, whether it's my rankings articles. Can be found on Full Press Coverage. A couple weeks from now, I'll start my goal line guide article series. I usually like to start that week 5, give myself 4 weeks of data before putting that out. I have been tracking goal line usage, plays inside the fives, which offenses are scoring, which effective at stopping that, but will feed the goal guide articles once that's 5. Those will also incorporate these sit decisions as well. So the spreadsheet I showed earlier as the weeks get on, I'll start throwing in more things than just, implied totally over-unders, projections, the defense rank, all that, you know, point totals, week 1 totals this week so far. So, yeah, once the goal line guide's out, it's just another piece of data to throw in there. Yeah, thanks so much to everyone. Thanks, Joel. Thanks, News Clues. Uh, Thank you everyone for watching another edition of Full Press Fantasy Live. Best of luck today, and have some fantasy football fun.